Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, we're going to be going over Judicator Hands of Judgment Paladin. So, if you are unaware of the meta of Judgment currently, the idea most of the time is to turn Consecrated Ground into an aura, so it's around you, kind of like RF, and then, of course, stack mana with Pious Offering, and then give yourself all that mana back with Reversal after you spend it so that you can essentially maintain a loop where you get a very large consecrated aura, which does a very large amount of damage. Now, this build is clunky at best. You have to do a lot of buttons beforehand to set it up, and a lot of people don't really like that, to be honest. It is the most efficient way of currently playing Judgment at the moment, but I think I finally found an alternative for people who don't want to press as many buttons, and I present to you Judicator Judgment Paladin. So, Judicator is a two-handed spear that was released a while back, and it's by far one of my favorite uniques in the game currently, as it just has everything that I'd want on it. It has cool art. It just does so many different things in one piece. Like you can play a crit smite build with it, you can play a judgment build with it, you can play a holy shell javelin build with it. The opportunities with this item are endless, and this is one of its, versions, and that is Judgment Dot. So a lot of people are unaware of this, as I was unaware of it until a while back. Essentially, the auras that you put down on the ground, like those consecrated grounds, they actually can stack unless if you go for the aura node. If you go for the aura node, essentially what happens is whenever you cast your judgment, it will cast as like an aura. And then if you cast judgment again, it'll disable it and then re-enable it, right? So instead of creating more grounds, what it will do is just re-enable the aura. Now, this is important because if we don't go the aura node, we can stack as many judgment grounds as humanly possible, and that enables this build. So, in combination with, of course, Judicator's cooldown recovery speed for judgment, we also run Hands of Judgment. Now, this was released about like a patch or two ago. Essentially, these give you a very large amount of cooldown recovery speed for Judgment, and they also give a really nice amount of Fire Pen, which is equivalent to an Atrophies, by the way, which is the whole point of running Atrophies, meaning that these are really good as they have a low LP base. You can get really good stats on them. Overall, like Hands of Judgment are great for this build because guess what? Since the consecrated aura, like the consecrated ground, since they can stack, we want to just spam judgment, right? We just want to spam the ever living crap out of it. We want to just keep pressing it, keep pressing it, keep pressing it. And the cooldown recovery speed on Hands of Judgment allows this. And on top of course, the Judicator's cooldown and cooldown on gear means that we can place down up to like I think four grounds on the ground constantly, which is great. And then, of course, we combine this with, of course, Javelin's node, which gives us 60% more damage. And all of that combined gives us a competitive way of scaling our DPS versus other builds. And that's great. The playstyle, like I said, is a little bit different. You essentially just put the ground AoE on the ground and then you move on. And that's great, right? Now, of course, uh, another cool thing about this build is we're utilizing Lunge. Now, Lunge has an interesting node in it that allows you to cast Javelin, right, after you lunge. Now, this is very important because while we're in monos, this means if I lunge, right, then the javelin will shoot out because I have a spear equipped, right? And that means that the javelin will shoot out, and then I'll get the 60% more damage with my next judgment, making my monolith clear very smooth as I just lunge, judgment, and that's my entire monolith clearing experience. It's great. And of course, we sprinkle in reversals here or there when enemies want to take triple damage, of course, obviously. Now, of course, you still have to play with reversal because, you shouldn't be stupid. You should actually take advantage of the insane damage over time that it gives you. Maybe one day they'll nerf it, but thankfully this will be this will be a build that survives even if they nerf that, which is cool. But overall, I think the build has been great. I've been enjoying it a lot. So, if you ended up enjoying it, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Now, with all that being said, we're going to go in game and talk about the build more in detail, shall we? All right, so here we are in game with the character. Let's go over the skills real quick. So for Judgment here, we take 2 points travel into Sanctified Serenity. which is nice, getting a little bit extra cool healing effectiveness. Then, of course, we grab 4 points out of Lingering Force. Duration means that we get to stack more consecrated auras on top of each other, which is great. So the more duration, the better, of course. 4 points in destructive impact. We want our ground to be as big as possible. One of the most important things to do, so if you can tell here, when I smack the ground, you'll see the melee area of judgment right here, right? You see that? Now, normally, that would be how big the consecrated ground is, right? So if I were to smack something, I'm not sitting in that consecrated ground, meaning that I'm not benefiting from the healing from the aura, because the healing from the aura is insane. As it starts out at 50, and with all of my extra healing effectiveness, it gets very, very high. And of course, it can stack. If you have multiple auras, you can have multiple healing ticks on you. Now, of course, as you can tell, with all this extra area, we're actually sitting inside the circle as I cast Judgment. You definitely want to reach that point, as like it smoothens your monolith experience overall in your bossing, because you want to be inside the circle because it's a lot of free sustain. Like, you can face tank a lot of stuff thanks to this, which is great, as you can tell in the footage. Now, 2 points travel into Swift Verdict. Eventually, if you get more plus levels of Judgment, you can go for a cooldown recovery speed. I have a 1.6 cooldown. Eventually, you'd want to get to a 1 second cooldown or less, which would be great. Then 4 points into Flaming Soul for the 100% more damage. Then 3 out of 4 points and Purifying Flame. Eventually, we would want more points into this. Now, one cool thing about this build is we are grabbing 1 point in Pious Offering. Most of the time, Pious Offering, when my mana is neutral, as we'll get there in a second. I only have 8 mana regen. I'm waiting for it to get neutral here. So when my mana is neutral, we kind of sacrifice ish 20-ish% mana. This means that this node just gives us 40% more damage for free. Because our mana, like with our judgment and all that, it essentially kind of like zeroes out around 60. And that just gives us 40% more damage. Now, of course, if you scaled mana regen just a little bit, you could actually get a little bit more out of Pious Offering, technically. But that's just up to you in that regard, right? Now, and that's pretty much it for Judgment. Now, for Javelin, of course, Javelin, the main things we care about is perfect setup for the minus 25 cost. This is really strong, as it makes it so that Judgment costs 0 mana, and that is great because, we can, spam Judgment easier in monoliths and 0 mana. Javelin's also 0 mana, which is great. Then 4 points into Sacred Forge so that we get a bunch of more damage. Now, you could take a few points out of this and then eventually go into Battle Standard, but that would make Javelin actually cost mana, which is something that I don't want to do because I don't want Judgment to actually cost mana, of course, because I like being able to spam my Javelin for 0 mana, as it makes the build feel very good in monoliths because I don't have to worry about my mana at all. Like, my mana is completely I don't have to worry about it, which is great. Then Holy Aura, same kind of Holy Aura setup that like a lot of other builds use. Mainly, we're going for Fire Pin, the fire damage, the attack and cast speed is great. The healing effect here is great, and then eventually the reses to like cap your reses. I am so unbelievably overcapped reses that I don't need the points into this other than the endurance. But eventually, like, you could take points out of here or like put more points into here if your gear is worse. And of course, reversal here, stereotypical reverse setup. Mainly, all we care about is time rifts here, which gives 120% increased damage over time taken because we have 2 rifts, which they both shotgun on single target and give us double that. And of course, we have Harbinger of Dust with just another 60%. So we get about 280% increased damage taken from enemies, which is wonderful. And since we're stacking cooldown recovery speed, we can get like it down to 2.6 seconds and constantly spam it on a single target, giving us a very large amount of damage boost. Hopefully one day they make it so that this node does not double dip with Incipient Void Rift, like it doesn't double dip with the extra Void Rifts, and then eventually it'll be just like 90% increased damage taken. And at that point, I'll be honest, like even then our damage is still competitive, which is kind of funny, which is great. And that's pretty much it with Volatile Reversal. And of course, Lunge, main things we care about. We mainly care about Pilum Assault, so that we, of course, get a Javelin after Spear, a Javelin after lunging, then 3 points in the Cold of the Week for the kill threshold, because that helps on bosses. And that's pretty much it for Lunge. Now, for passives that are important here, most importantly, We just need to get 5 to get volatile reversal. I'm grabbing this for the extra armor when hit because I like armor. I've been kind of finding this node a lot better and better as I've been noticing it. Like it's a lot of free armor, which is great. Now, nodes that we actually care about, we care about as much healing effectiveness as possible. We want the fire pen here because we don't have too much fire pen. Eventually, grabbing these points save you a bunch of suffixes for crit avoid, which is great. And of course, the increased life, increased healing factors is great here. Then the increased damage and movement speed. This will make your monolith gameplay feel pretty smooth, which is great. And that's pretty much it for passives, which is great. Now, let's talk about blessings real quick. So the first blessing that you want to be getting is a Black Sun blessing, Grand Hunger of the Void. This will make it so that you leech from your spell dots that you're applying on the ground. Now, healing is great and all, but you're not always going to be inside your aura, and you have a Titan Heart equipped, meaning that you're not sustaining if you're not inside the aura. So you want some leech, and spell leech is very strong. Now, if you do not have access to the spell leech, right, from Black Sun, you can always wear a pair of Avarice here. Where is it? Yep. You can always wear this until you get that. And of course, eventually Hands of Judgment too, right? Which is great. Then for Blessing here, eventually you'd want like something like, I don't know, like Ward on Hit or like Lightning Res or something like that. Or I guess Mana, it doesn't really matter on this Blessing, to be honest. There's not that many good ones for us. And of course, Reign of Dragons for the crit avoid, of course. Spirits of Fire for flat armor. Then Age of Winter for percent armor. Eventually, I gotta get this to the higher version. And that's pretty much it for blessings. Now let's talk about gearing. So for idols, all we care about are healing effect idols. You can get healing effect and HP idols, which would be absolutely wonderful, but mainly just healing effect. You just want to like reach like 800-ish healing effect. We also have some attunement scaling, so we get a little bit from our thing here, or about like 1,000% attunement, which is 1,000% healing effect right now, which is great. Now for mandatory uniques, of course, Judicator. I did not roll well on mine. Try to roll better than me. It does give you spell fire damage, which is cool, so it makes up for the fact that you're not actually running like a wand or anything. Of course, Hands of Judgment. You don't need any modifiers on Hands of Judgment. It's good enough as it is, as long as it has a high enough cooldown recovery speed on it to get your judgment really low. The attunement's cool and all, but that's not very important. All you care about is just how high that cooldown recovery speed roll is, and eventually the fire pen roll. And then, of course, I got a really good pair here, as you can tell. Titan Heart is not mandatory. You can just run a different chest until you get a Titan Heart. I just like my Titan Heart because it gives us a lot of less damage taken, thanks to the fact we're running a two-handed melee weapon, and gives us a lot of increased HP. So it's like kind of like your perfect best in slot eventually. Now, let's talk about the other gear here. HP, we're stacking as much HP and cooldown recovery speed as possible. That fire damage over time prefix is pretty nice though. The amulet here, spell damage, healing effect, HP of course. Oracle amulet base is great because that on top of your Titan Heart makes it so you don't die to poison constantly, which is wonderful. Judicator, of course, like I said. Rings here, spell damage, elemental damage over time, attunement, all of those work, healing effect on your prefixes. Your suffixes can be whatever you can shove on it, preferably HP. I don't actually need this Res at all. I'd rather have HP here. Same thing here, Fizz Res, fire damage. You probably want elemental damage over time though, but I like silver rings because I like going fast in my monoliths. And of course, Hands of Judgment here. I got dot and HP. Eventually, you'd probably want attunement on a pair, not for this build, but other versions of Hands of Judgment builds. They are attunements. Like these are really good gloves for attunement stacking. So you want to get as much attunement as possible, but mine didn't roll that high in attunement, so I thought I'd use it for this build instead. And we got damage over time, tier 6, and hybrid health, which is great. Then boots here, max rolled cooldown recovery speed, movement speed, vitality, stuff like that, or strength. That would work too. There's the belt here, cooldown recovery speed, HP, elemental damage over time. Eventually, you'd want cleanse. I didn't get cleanse, sadly, but it's whatever. And of course, relic here, elemental damage over time, healing effect, res. As you can tell, my gear is nowhere near min-max. You could very easily hit 4k HP with this character if you really cared. If you wanted to, you could actually dump an idol or two and put in increased HP idols, and that would help you get to 4k as well. And that would make you very, very tanky. And if you wanted to push corruption, that would be the way to go. Now, with all that being said, this has been Dread. Off to go work on something else. Bye.